Before we get started with this episode, I want to remind you that September 10, 2022 is the date for this year's Bike to Beat Cancer, one of the premier organized rides in the Louisville area. Now, if you haven't signed up yet, it's not too late. You can visit the website p2p.onecause.com/bike to beat cancer and use the registration code LCP for a free registration. And if you can't make the ride this year, you can still join us in the fight against cancer right here in our community by going to that website, searching for Barry Gary, and making a donation today. Now, everyone has been touched by cancer in some way, and through Bike to Beat Cancer, you have an opportunity to strike back against this awful disease right here at home. All proceeds go to support the fight against cancer in our community. Now, loosen up those purse strings. Buckle up that helmet strap and clip in. It's time for the Louisville Cycling Podcast, the podcast that celebrates the people, rides, and events that make Louisville and the surrounding area a great place to ride a bike. Cyclists, by and large, are a healthy group. But what happens to your cycling ambitions when life throws you a curveball, especially when it impacts your health? My guest today, Heather Sauer, can speak from firsthand experience. A passionate and dedicated cyclist, Heather recently received some news that has an impact not only on her cycling goals, but can potentially require significant life adaptations as well. But you know what? She's just as willing to tackle her challenges as she is ready to attack the pace on a group ride. Her story is both informative and inspirational. Well, Heather, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Barry. So happy to be here.
Great. I'm looking forward to talking with you. And I want to start just, what are some of your earliest memories of riding a bike?
Oh, good question. Well, I remember, and I actually have a picture of it, of me on a little tricycle. I'm the third of four children. And in our backyard, we had a little pad where we would just go around and around and around. And I remember racing my brothers and sisters, just having the best time. And then as we got older, we always rode bikes in the metro parks. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. So they have something called the Emerald Mint Necklace. And it's expanded now, but it was probably about 26 miles back and out and back. And I remember at some point asking my mom, "Are you trying to kill us with exercise?" And she was like, "No, I just need you guys to burn off all this energy so that when we come back home, you're calm."
Were your parents cyclists?
They were. My dad is an engineer by trade, and my mom was a technical editor, so lots of head work. And so they got into biking because there are four of us. I have an older sister named Deirdre, who's 3 years older than me, and then a sister named Cecily, who's since passed. And we can talk about that a little bit later, but she's a year and a half older than me. And then me, and then my brother is 3 years younger than me. So with four energetic children, they found ways to always keep us active, and we played outside all the time.
Yeah.
So bikes was just one of the many things that we did. And my parents actually began running when probably we were about teenagers, and that was something that they stuck with for quite a long period of time.
Now, do any of your other brothers or sisters still ride bikes, or are you the one that kind of caught the bug?
Well, I would say I have the biggest bug, but my oldest sister does ride a bike. She's got a route that she does consistently. That's about 25 miles, and she does it on the weekends and then some weeknights. But she refuses to wear a helmet, so that's a little bit of a conversation we have every once in a while. I'm like,
oh, so she's going old school.
Oh boy. I'm like, but your brain is so important. Make sure it's covered up.
Yeah. So how do you describe yourself as a cyclist today?
Today, I am more about the quality of rides than the quantity. Typically, each year I've set a miles goal. So I want to have like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 miles. Now it's more about enjoying the rides that I go on and not worrying about the data. I really enjoy just different routes, different people. There are some things that are nice from a standard. I can just ride along and not really worry about it. But I really fancy like the experience, getting to know new people, getting to see new things. And, just being on a bike is a true joy for me.
Yeah. Now, do you do anything competitively, or is it more something you do just for yourself with groups? How do you ride most of the time?
Right now, it's mostly with groups and with my husband. We've done thousands of miles together. He's my
Good.
my best mate. I have done some mountain bike racing, and then I did short track. I'm embarrassed to say, probably like 7 years ago. And those little kids were the biggest competitors, and I'm like, wow, what an ego crush! These 7-year-olds are kicking me. I'll catch them on the downhill, but they got me on the uphill.
Yeah. Well, there's not a whole lot of weight. The weight to watts ratio is pretty easy when you weigh 45 pounds.
And they don't pay for their own health insurance, so they don't care if they fall.
Yeah. Yeah. The immortal youth.
Yeah.
So why is riding a bike such an important part of who you are?
I've thought about this a lot. It's changed over time. When my husband and I relocated here from Columbus in 2011, I didn't have a peer group because I was brand new and he traveled right off the bat. So one of the things that I found was through the Meetup app, if you remember that,
Mm-hmm.
was some cycling that was a Monday night mountain bike ride that Stephanie Wallen oversaw and led. And I joined that group after I got my first mountain bike. And then I just fell in love with it because I did cross country for many years when I was in high school. So I really like the rugged outdoors feel of mountain biking because it's kind of a parallel to cross country running. And then there's so much to riding a mountain bike. It just takes you completely in the moment. You forget your cares because you have to make all these little micro decisions. And it's really a skill based slash enjoyable experience because you see an obstacle that you think, man, I am never going to get over that or get down that. And then you realize, oh, I just need to follow somebody and see what line they take. And that's how you learn.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my entree into mountain biking and, really like seriously getting into buying more bikes.
Now, what's the ratio now? Do you ride more mountain bike or more road bike?
Right now, it's more road bike, simply because it's just easier. I work near Cherokee Park, and because the weather has not been super gracious, it's really rutted out. I don't know if you've ridden Cherokee recently, but it's a really different trail right now.
Mhm.
So it's kind of wait and see when the weather is good. But I kind of, depending on the season and depending how I'm feeling and what kind of ride I need, will decide.
Yeah. Now, what groups do you typically ride with? You said you like to ride with groups. Who do you typically latch on to and ride with?
Well, riding Fodden is my newest addiction because John Mahorny just does an awesome job. I don't know when that guy sleeps, but he puts up rides all the time. And it's just a great grouping of individuals. There's so much variety. So that's the like more organized ride. And then just friends, people that I've
Yeah.
known for a long period of time would be the most group oriented rides that I do.
So, do you have anything you point to that you would say, here's one of my accomplishments on the bike?
Well, I did place, let's see, second last year at Green River in the mountain bike race, and I was pretty
Great.
pleased with that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was didn't do a lot of like mountain bike specific training, but I live in Prospect, and in our neighborhood there's all these crazy hills. So I would have this routine where I would just go do hill repeats or 20 miles with intervals that had hills in them, and I was just really ready for it. And so I'm competitive by nature, but this is like a fun competition. And I knew I had no expectations about like a glorious ending. I just wanted to have fun. And I was really pleased with how I did.
Yeah. You said you moved down here from Columbus. What brought you to the Louisville area?
My husband, Michael, got a job at Axo Nobel, and we came down and looked at 19 houses in 2 days and found a winner in Prospect. And that's what brought us here. And I love it here. I love the weather. I love the people. There's all these vibrant arts communities. There's a great foodie scene, the biking. And I feel like the biking is really the grease that keeps the
Hmm.
wheel moving because it's something that introduced me to people I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to get to know in any other way. It's that shared interest that kind of brought us together and then has kept us together.
And I always tell people, I mean, Louisville is, I'm a big ambassador for Louisville because I think Louisville is one of the best places you can live. If you want to raise a family, it's great. If you like the arts and you like theater, you like, whatever you like, we either have it or really, really close to it. And so I've lived in Louisville for far too many years and I've passed up a lot of opportunities because I don't want to leave. I just really like it here. So, and I know you've been here for a while, but we're glad to have you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Now, tell me about your work. What do you do?
So I have the best job I've ever had. I'm so excited about it. And people who know me will also say she never shuts up about it. I work for a local nonprofit called Dreams with Wings, and we have been around for 22 years. And our agency serves people with intellectual and developmental disabilities like autism and Down syndrome and many, many other diagnoses. And I run the teen and young adult program, which is going to turn 3 in October. So I'm really excited about it. And what I do on a daily basis in that program is create things that offer a safe space for people who have different abilities to come and either learn about social skills or art or boot camp and yoga and moving the mind and the body and activating all different parts of the brain. And the program that I run serves people from age 13 to 29 because it's so hard to turn people away.
Yeah.
And the other component of my job just ended last Friday. It's a seasonal responsibility. So we run a summer camp and we have some generous funding partners. Down Syndrome of Louisville helps us out with our camp that serves people with Down syndrome. We had 37 campers this year. And then Families for Effective Autism Treatment funds our camp that serves people on the autism spectrum. And we had 48 beautiful humans
Wow.
in that camp. So you add those numbers together and then you have about 30 different staff. And it's, close to 100 folks that we
Yeah.
oversee. And it's 7 weeks during the summer, 8 hours a day, Monday through Friday. So it's a lot of energy, a lot of work, but also an incredible amount of joy.
Now, does your passion for cycling leak into your work?
It does in a way because there is an association called I Can Bike that teaches people with disabilities to ride bikes. And it just so happens it also occurs at the same time as our summer camp. So I've not had an opportunity to witness it, but from what I hear from the parents who have children who've gone through that program, they actually cry because they're like, my child, I didn't think would ever ride a bike in 5 days knows how to ride a bike.
Wow.
And it's amazing. And I have a nephew who's on the autism spectrum. And my brother took him through that program in Columbus, Ohio. And he's like, you would not believe how amazing it is. And so I think one of the parallels is people look at somebody, and I think this is more applicable maybe in mountain biking. You can look at somebody's physique and you're like, that person, I want to kill him on the course. And then you're like, oh no, they schooled me so hard. You can look at somebody and really not know a lot about them, but have these preconceived notions. It's the same thing with the people I work with. Like, I do one-on-one supports with this amazing young lady named Emily. She's 22. She has Down syndrome. She has the biggest dreams of anybody I've ever met. And I'm like, oh my God, we're like so similar because we have to kind of check each other in that we want to do all these things, but we have to focus on maybe 5 today.
Yeah.
And then we'll get those done. And I feel like just like looking at somebody and assessing that they're fast or they're good on a bike, we fall into that same pattern with people who have a disability. That person looks different. Maybe they don't speak as quickly as me. Maybe they take a little time in the grocery store to do the U-scan. They still have value. They still have dreams. They still deserve every chance to lead a beautiful life.
Well said. Tell me a little bit again, just, it's a nonprofit organization, and I know funding is always important for nonprofit organizations. So if someone's listening and wants to learn more about Dreams with Wings or even donate to the organization or anything like that, give me a little bit of the details about how to get in contact or how to learn more about the organization.
Sure. So we have a website. We're on social media. It's dreamswithwings.org. It's really simple to find us. And in addition to the program that I run and spoke about regarding summer camp and teen and young adults, we also have supported employment. We have residential living. We have respite and community living supports. And we actually serve people aged 7 through 87. So there's almost an entire lifespan of services that we can offer. We gladly welcome people in as volunteers. We are always looking for good people to work with us, and we will absolutely take donations of either time or in kind or financial. So you can find us on social media and our website. We'd love to tell you more about us and how you can help.
Great. Now, Heather, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. And we chatted earlier, and you told me that you recently received a diagnosis of relapsing and remitting multiple sclerosis. Now, I haven't heard that whole phrase before, so explain a little bit about what that is and what that means for you.
Sure, and I'm still learning about it too. So I can maybe take you back a little bit on how I found out I had it, if you'll indulge me.
Yes.
In the middle of December, I noticed a numb spot on my back, and I was like, "Oh, that's weird." And then progressively over a period of days, the entire right side of my body went numb, except for my right arm, which had this really pernicious itch right on my bicep. And I was like, okay, well, this is not normal. And in July of 2021, I had a pretty gnarly mountain bike accident and had a shoulder separation. So I had to have surgery. That resulted in me sleeping in these really funky positions. So I thought, oh, I've got to have a compressed nerve. That's what I thought it was. That would explain the numbness, because there were specific points where the numbness seemed to be centered. So I went to a doctor. He recommended going to PT. I did that for about 2.5 months. And, the way that the numbness spread, it started at the top of the body and went down, and then it receded in the opposite direction. And I distinctly recall walking across the carpet saying, "Michael, I could feel the bottom of my foot." It was so weird. And so I ended up going to see my primary care physician and explained to her like what happened. And she said, "Well, I'm not sure about that." So she had me do the tree pose in yoga just to look at my balance. And I was a little unsteady. And I said, "Well, I've been fasting for 12 hours, doctor." And she's like, "Okay, walk a straight line for me." And I did it. She's like, "All right, well, how about you come back in like 6 weeks? We'll see how you are." And I said, "Okay." And then the next day, I received a phone call from her, and she said, "Well, I was thinking about you last night." And I'm like, "Well, that can't be good." And she said, "I really don't buy your compressed nerve story, because the way that you're explaining the numbness and what they call tingling is not pins and needles tingling, like when your foot falls asleep. It actually feels like electrical surges." And then I also felt like there was a coil wrapped around my quad, my knee, and my ankle. And that has the earmarks of MS. So she said, "Listen, we're just going to disqualify everything that it could be, and I'm going to send you for an MRI." And I'm like, okay. So the next week I got the MRI. And then the day afterwards, the great thing about the MyChart app is you see your results.
Yeah.
The bad thing about the MyChart app is you see your results before a human being says, "Hey, you have a life-changing diagnosis." And I'm like, oh, these are lots of big words that I don't understand. So I spoke with my doctor, and she said, "Yes, you have a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. Looks like relapsing and remitting. And what that means is you're going to have periods where you experience symptoms and then they recede and they go away, basically. So a relapse is when you experience the symptoms, and then the remission is the period between those relapses." And so she said, "I'm going to connect you with Dr. Anna Bite, who's amazing. She's in the Norton Neuroscience Institute." We actually have like a center of excellence here in Louisville. I'm like, well, of all the places I could get this is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And I got to see my scans. So I have a lesion on my spine and I have 4 spots in my brain, which, if there was ever a question about how cool medical technology is, an MRI will
Light
really
it up.
make it very clear. And so, I had a series of questions, and interspersed in those questions was, "Are you sure it's MS? Are you sure it's MS?" It's
Yeah.
just like, yeah,
Well,
it is.
shout out to your doctor for not just letting it go and actually giving it some thought and coming back to it. I mean, it sounds like you're in really, really good hands.
I could not be more pleased with everybody I have had contact with. The people at Norton have cared for me in such incredible ways, from the initial diagnosis to the support personnel to the people who put on this MS 101 class. So if you're new to the diagnosis, you don't know, they walk you through, here's all the things that are earmarks of MS, here's the treatment options available, here's other people and how they've been managing the symptoms. And they talk a lot about fatigue and stress as exacerbators for the relapses. So I'm learning a lot about sleep hygiene and, finding my zen on a daily basis. So
Mm-hmm.
even though I have a beautiful job and a wonderful husband and in all accounts, a like perfect, quote unquote, perfect life,
Yeah.
there are these other things that I need to take into account and not get so stressed about.
Well, I can't say enough that's good about Norton. I worked there for 9 years and just really love the organization. And you're absolutely right in terms of the experience of care that you get at Norton. I don't think there's a better place for you could be. So you're in good hands. And I know this has a big impact on you and your life, but does it also roll over and impact you as a cyclist?
It does. The grieving period was the thing that really kind of snuck up on me, because I briefly mentioned that I had a sister who passed away. And that happened in September of 2021. She had Down syndrome and also had Alzheimer's, which is a horrible disease. Anybody who's ever experienced any form of dementia knows it's heartbreaking. They call it the longest day for a reason, because you see the person that you love who is so capable basically age backwards. And that was like the worst thing our family had ever been through. And she lived a life that was incredibly inspired, and really was a role model for me because she faced so many obstacles and overcame them. She was also kind of the glue in many ways for our family. We coalesced around her because she was such an amazing person that when she left us, there was just this huge vacuum. And through the grieving process, I went emotionally numb for about 3 months. And this is so strange to say, but my own diagnosis bumped me out of that numbness.
Yeah.
It created a kind of clarity that I didn't know was possible. And it's almost like everything that doesn't matter fell away
Yeah.
in that moment, and hearing, you have this, there is no cure for it, there's hope. There are people who have lived with it for years and years and years. And my doctor, when she was talking to me as I'm sitting on the steps outside of work, hearing what my new future is going to be, says, "You're still going to ride a bike. Don't worry about
Great.
it." And so now I'm hyper aware of how my body reacts to fatigue and stress. So biking for me has taken on a different flavor, in that it's always been something I'm proud of, that I talk a lot about, that I find as a coalescing force around the community that's built in it and how I've experienced my time here in Louisville. But it also is really important because when all else fails, I know I can get on that bike, go out for a ride, and I will feel better when I come back home.
Yeah. Now, what was your sister's name who passed away?
Her name is Cecily.
Cecily. Okay.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned that it helps to kind of clear your mind and let things drop off. But does cycling have any advantages to you on a physiological or physical, standpoint?
It does, because keeping your body healthy is really key for MS. I have collected my own little crew of people who also have the same diagnosis and share information. And there's like 3 key things. Gut health is super important. Work on your core strength and like be hyper aware of how your body is behaving, and any changes, let your doctors know. And so biking helps you do all those things. You have to treat yourself well to be fit and ride a bike. You have to eat good things because you need energy to go on a bike ride. And then you also have to be aware of the pains in your body, and are they just physical exertion, or could they be hallmarks of something serious that you need to pay attention to?
Yeah. Now, have you adapted the way you ride?
I would say the quantity of rides I do is the adaptation, because previously I would ride like almost every morning during the week and then do like a longer ride on the weekend. I've now incorporated like more, well, I do yoga pretty much every morning. It kind of centers me, gives me some tranquility at the beginning of the day. And I've interspersed walks and then like weight training. So I'm not as singly focused on cycling, but it still plays a major role in my health and wellness.
Yeah. What has cycling taught you that will help you to keep, pedaling into the future?
Well, I think one of the biggest lessons it's taught me is there really are no limits. You can set goals, but the goals don't necessarily have to be data driven. They can be, I want to enjoy the bike rides that I go on. I want to meet new people. I want to go on new routes. Also, I think, you know, as strange as it sounds, and even though I had so many miles saddle time last year and even the year before, I'm actually faster this year. So
Oh, great.
yeah, it's the quantity versus the quality. I feel like all the stored energy I have in reserve, because I know I need to be more mindful of how I spend my energy now. I can like really pound it out on the bike, feel good, and know that I don't need to do that every single day of the week, that I have an appropriate time, enough time to recover, and then I can go and do that again in several days.
Yeah, now, obviously you're not there yet, but there's a book called Fast After 50 that really talks a lot about, how that, riding less, but riding more intensely, and how you can maintain a lot of fitness that people used to think you had to spend hours and hours and hours on the bike to get. I mean, that's a very loose paraphrase of the book, but it's a great book and talks a lot about exactly what you're talking about.
I just wrote that down. I might have to check it out.
Well, you have to give it a few years because you're not there yet.
Yeah. It's knocking. I'm knocking on that door. Sooner or
There you
later,
go.
we'll all be there.
The Louisville Cycling Podcast is sponsored by United Financial Group. If you know someone who is considering a new home purchase or refinancing of a current home, there's no better group to work with than our friends at Team UFG. With UFG, you get great rates and loan packages that fit your individual circumstances, and you'll find no one with a bigger commitment to service and relationships. And you'll close smoothly and on time. You can check them out at www.ufglending.com and get pre-approved as soon as you start thinking about purchasing or refinancing. Ask for John and make sure you mention that you heard about them on the Louisville Cycling Podcast. Well, Heather, I'm going to switch course again just a little bit, and I always like to ask something I call the lightning round during these conversations, where I'm going to ask you a few questions and just, kind of tongue in cheek, but just to see where it goes. And the first one is, what is the one thing that you absolutely cannot ride without? What is your most important piece of bike kit?
I need to have gum. I know that sounds silly, but I always have to have gum because there's just something about like being able to chew the gum. I feel like if I don't, then I miss it all the time. That and probably some chapstick.
Well, I understand the chapstick, but I don't know that I've ever tried to chew gum and ride. I mean, have you ever swallowed your gum?
Probably on occasion, but I growing up played so many different sports and I always had to have gum, like especially when I played soccer, I'd be like, I need a piece of gum.
So after a big ride where you've done really, really well, what is something you do to reward yourself?
It used to be drink a beer, but I have to kind of watch that now. I think just reflecting on how the ride went and the experience I have is something I do because I can have a tendency to just go look at Strava. How did I do? What was my segment? Where am I on the leaderboard? Now it's more like sitting in the moment and like reveling in the experience and knowing that was a good ride and then reminding myself there are going to be other good rides and,
Yeah.
there's something to look forward to.
Yeah. So what's one of your favorite routes to ride in and around Louisville?
I love Rose Island Road. There's something about the undulating hills and that climb, and you go up to the Goshen store, and then you come
Mm-hmm.
back down. I mean, you can really get a lot of speed. It's really picturesque and peaceful if you pick the right day and the right time. And then aside from that, there's a lot of just different little segments of road. So there's a lot of little poetic sections of different mountain bike trails where you're like, oh, it's so fun to go up and down and up and down. And, I like the variety. So anything that's new and different is also something I enjoy.
So what's something you've changed your mind about recently?
Actually, there is this term called invisible disability. And so, because I work with people with disabilities that are more apparent when you look at them, if you see somebody with Down syndrome, chances are you know that they have Down syndrome. But I also work with people who are on the autism spectrum. And a lot of times, until you have a conversation, you don't know that there's something a little different and beautiful about them. And MS is also considered an invisible disability. And I've changed my mind a lot about what it means to have an adaptive life. So at some point, hopefully very far in the future, it may be that I can't ride a bike anymore, or I need to ride an e-bike because I can't do it on my own. And I used to think that people who rode e-bikes, were cheating or weren't as real cyclists. And, I've come to the other side of as long as somebody is on a bike and they're enjoying themselves, that's all that matters. And then maybe
Yeah.
they need that help.
I just got back last week from Germany and spent some time there. And I was really a little surprised that, of course, Europe in general, a lot of people ride their bikes, daily for transportation. But it was almost about 50-50 on, normal bikes and e-bikes. And it was a little bit surprising to me how many e-bikes that I saw over there.
Yeah, I think as we all age, because it's going to happen to every single one of us, there's going
Mm-hmm.
to be a point where you need that little assist, and there shouldn't be any shame in that. I think it should be celebrated that somebody has a joy for cycling and they found a way to continue to do it despite growing older, despite maybe having something physical that didn't work, doesn't work the same way that it did when they were younger. I think the focus should be on the fact that they're still riding, not necessarily what they're riding.
Well, I've been on a few rides where I've been killed for an e-bike.
Haven't we
I
all?
don't care what you think. I would have loved to have one. Yeah. What's one piece of cycling technology that you would never want to give up?
Oh, as much as I say, I don't want to focus on the data. Like, I do love my Garmin because it
Mm-hmm.
is really, you do have this, it is helpful to see how you've done and how fast you're going. And there is some joy when you're zipping down a hill and you're like, "Oh, miles an hour. That's
Yeah.
incredible." And I think it also helps you monitor your health too. So if you have the heart rate monitor, then you kind of know, oh, I'm reaching a period where I need to like recover and not put myself into a deficit. And I think there's a lot of value. It's kind of like social media. You have to know how to use it well
Mm-hmm.
and not get consumed by it.
Yeah. Yeah. I rode once this week and I was riding and I felt a kind of a fluttering. I was like, well, that was kind of weird. And I came back and looked on my, I had my heart rate monitor on and looked and saw this spike during that time where my heart rate went really, really up, like unusually high for me, and came back down. I'm like, well, that's kind of odd. I don't, wonder what that, but at least it gives you that data where you can go back and see, well, yeah, that thing I felt on the ride was real. And, it doesn't happen a lot or anything, but it was just kind of an odd thing. And I wouldn't be able to check on it if I didn't have my heart rate monitor on and all that stuff. So what goal do you have for cycling currently?
My goal for cycling currently is to Oh, this should be an easy answer, but it feels like so so important. I think it's just to keep being out there and keep making it accessible to people,
Hmm.
because I feel like a lot of times, even in the group rides, you see everybody come and they're all kitted up and they have these $10,000 bikes. And then you're on this ride and we'll call it like $100,000 worth of equipment and people and kits riding down the road. And then there'll be somebody riding on the other side of the road, the other way, wearing jeans, and they're just trying to get to their job. Wave to that person. They are also a biker.
Absolutely.
You don't have to have the fanciest of bikes to enjoy the same thing that we are enjoying in our group ride. Say hi, tell the kid, cool helmet, be a good ambassador for everybody who's around you on a bike.
I agree. Well said. Now, while you're on the bike, what is your favorite fuel on the bike?
I really like some goo, I'll tell you that. 'Cause
Okay.
I feel like that's an easy thing to consume. And then at some point, I found these little packets of it's almost like applesauce or fruit, and it gives you that shot of sugar, and
Hmm.
it's natural sugar. And I really like those. And then the Go Macro vegan bars, I think, are a really good source of energy, and they're easier to consume and not as kind of chalky as some of the Cliff bars are.
Yeah. So when you're off the bike, finish a ride, what's your favorite post-ride meal?
Well, I love to cook. So right now I'm in a really vegetable forward phase of my life. So
Hmm.
anything that feels healthy going and it doesn't weigh me down. So lots of vegan options, but I also like fish, and then I'll throw in some, traditional proteins every once in a
Yeah.
while.
So what are you really curious about these days?
I'm really curious to see where life takes me next. Honestly,
Hmm.
I'm excited about my job because coming off this great period of creativity and joy that summer camp always brings, I have so many ideas for our teen and young adult program, and I'm like actively looking for people I can bring in and help become part of our program. And I've got a really good start. So I'm just kind of curious to see how I can continue to add value to the agency and organization that I work for, how I continue to connect with people who are either existing clients of Dreams with Wings or people who don't even know about us, that we can do something with and show them, hey, you're part of society, you're part of the community. We've got a spot for you.
Well, and it's to me, it's always encouraging and invigorating to talk with people who are passionate about what they do, and I can really feel that when you talk about your work. And well, first of all, thanks for doing that work because I know
Yeah.
it's not easy all the time, and secondly, thanks for doing it well.
Thank you. And I have to give a shout out to our executive director, Jennifer Frohmeyer. She is an amazing person. And I've never seen somebody who is so invested in ensuring everybody has a space, everybody is cared for, and that everybody has a dream that we help manifest. I mean, I can't say enough positive things about her. She is an amazing person.
Great. Well, that falls right in line with my next question. Who would you like to thank?
Well, definitely my husband, Michael Sauer, because through all these things that I've shared with you about like the recent diagnosis, but even before that, he's been by my side since day one. Our love story was interesting in that I knew pretty soon after I met him that he was the one, and it just continues to be reinforced day after day. My family has always been there for me too. And even though Cecily's no longer with us on this plane, we know she's looking down and pulling for us and hoping and dreaming along with us as well. And I'd like to thank you because this is a huge opportunity to talk about things I'm passionate about. And there's not a better voice for the Louisville cycling community than you.
Thank you. I do have to ask you, I can't get away without asking you, who's fastest, you or your husband?
Well, he doesn't listen to podcasts, so I'm going to go ahead and say, I am.
It sounds like it's not really a close contest.
Well, it depends. He will beat me on the hills probably 95% of the times, but I can put out some pretty good effort. And, We trade. We ride better together, and I think that's what makes us really strong. It's kept us in sync in so many different ways, and it's the thing that we really love to do together that is something I know we'll be able to do for a very long period of time, too.
And it sounds like that's something that should be on an anniversary card. We ride better together.
Thank you. I might have to make my own card.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Heather, I want to thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me and share your story and talk about, your passion for cycling and passion for a lot of things. I really wish you the best of luck, and I really hope to run into you again out there on the road. I know we met at the 4th of July ride, and it took us a little bit to connect after that, but it's been a joy talking to you tonight.
Absolutely. Worth the wait. And thank you for all you do. And yeah, we'll see you on the road.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
You've been listening to the Louisville Cycling Podcast. If you aren't a follower of the show yet, well, what are you waiting for? Head on over to your favorite podcast app and hit that follow button now. It's the best way to make sure you never miss a single episode. And if you'd like to learn more about me and other podcasts I produce, you can check it out at my website, barrygary.com. And while you're there, leave me some feedback or suggestions for the show. Well, that's it for this episode, but I'll be back soon with another episode of the Louisville Cycling Podcast. For now, though, I think it's time to get out and go for a ride.